In 2019, a man walked into a Mercedes dealership in a hoodie and beat-up sneakers. The salesman looked him up and down, decided he wasn't worth the effort, and spent the next 20 minutes with a guy in a designer jacket instead. The jacket guy drove off in a lease he could barely afford. The hoodie guy owned the shopping plaza the dealership was standing in. That salesman made the same mistake you've been trained to make your entire life. He assumed rich looks like spending. It doesn't. Real wealth is almost invisible because everything you can see on a rich-looking person is a receipt for money that's already gone. There are 8 levels that separate someone who looks rich from someone who is rich. They stack in order. You can't skip one, and most people spend their whole lives stuck below level 1 without knowing the ladder exists. By the end of this video, you'll be able to place anyone on it in about 30 seconds, including yourself, and level 8 will change how you think about money permanently. Let's start at the bottom. Here's the first fork in the road, and roughly 90% of people take the wrong path the moment money arrives. When most people get money, their first purchase announces it. The car, the watch, the trip that exists mainly as content. That's not wealth. That's converting wealth into applause, and applause has a terrible exchange rate. A proper rich person's first move with new money is boring on purpose. Index funds, a rental unit, a stake in a small business, equipment that earns, skills that raise their rate, things that pay them every month instead of things they pay for every month. Think about the same $80,000 spent 2 ways. Put it in a car and it loses $8,000 the second it leaves the lot, then eats $1,200 a month in payments, insurance, and depreciation. Put it into a small rental property and it pays out $600 a month while quietly growing in value. Run the clock forward 5 years. The car is worth $35,000 and has consumed $70,000 more of your money. The property is worth $100,000 and has paid you $36,000 along the way. Same starting money. One purchase makes you poorer every month it exists. The other makes you richer while you sleep. Warren Buffett bought his first stock at age 11 and still lives in the Omaha house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. He could buy the entire street with the interest on his interest. He doesn't because the street doesn't pay him. His portfolio does. And notice what this level really is. It's not a money rule, it's an ego rule. Status purchases are you paying the world to think something about you. Asset purchases are you paying your future self. The level 1 rule. Status is the last thing you buy, not the first. But assets alone don't make you properly rich because there's a trap waiting at level 2 that catches almost everyone who escapes level 1, including people earning $500,000 a year. Level 2. They own their time before they own more things. Ask yourself one uncomfortable question. If your income stopped tomorrow, how many months until you're broke? That number, your runway, is your real net worth. Not the salary, not the title, the time your money buys you. By this measure, most high earners are secretly poor. The lawyer making $400,000 with a $390,000 lifestyle is one bad quarter from panic. The surgeon with 3 financed properties and a boat is owned by his own calendar. There's a name for this condition: golden handcuffs. The salary climbs, the lifestyle climbs to match it, and the freedom that was supposed to arrive never does. They didn't buy a life, they bought a more expensive treadmill. A proper rich person measures wealth in months of freedom and defends the gap between what they earn and what they need like it's the whole game. Because it is. That gap is where freedom gets manufactured. Every euro of fixed monthly cost is a chain. Every euro of surplus is a key. 2 people can earn the exact same income, and one has a 2-month runway while the other has 20 years. Here's what this level actually buys, and you can't photograph it: the power to say no. No to the toxic client. No to the boss who crossed a line. No to the deal that smells wrong. Watch negotiations closely, and you'll notice the person who can walk away always wins, and the person who needs the deal always loses. Rich people don't negotiate better because they're smarter. They negotiate better because they're not desperate, and desperation is the most expensive thing you can bring to a table. Once they own their time, though, something interesting happens to how they think about debt. Because level 3 is where proper rich people do the exact opposite of what your parents taught you. Level 3. They use debt as a tool, not a trap. Here's a sentence that sounds insane until you understand it. The middle class avoids debt, the poor drown in it, and the rich collect it on purpose. The difference is one question asked before signing anything. Who pays this debt back? Me or the thing I bought? Bad debt is borrowing for things that shrink. The financed car, the credit card holiday, the furniture on installments. You pay interest for the privilege of owning something worth less every day. That's a wealth extraction machine pointed at yourself. Good debt is borrowing for things that earn. The mortgage a tenant pays down. The loan that buys machinery which triples output. The line of credit that lets a business grab discounted inventory before a busy season. In each case, the asset services its own debt, and you keep the growth. The payments flow from the tenant to the bank, from the customer to the bank, not from your salary to the bank. Your money never enters the loop, it just collects what's left over. This is also the answer to a question that puzzles normal people. Why do billionaires take loans when they have billions? Because selling assets triggers taxes and kills compounding. Borrowing against them does neither. They'd rather pay a bank 5% than pay the taxman 30% and stop the snowball. You don't need billions to use the principle. You need the principle. One warning, because this level has teeth. Leverage amplifies both directions. The same debt that doubles a good bet doubles a bad one, which is why proper rich people borrow against boring, cash-flowing things, never against hope. And once money and debt are working for them, they hit a wall that no amount of money can break, the 24-hour day. Level 4 is how they smash through it. Level 4. They stop trading hours and start building leverage. Here's the ceiling nobody warns you about. If your income requires your presence, it has a hard mathematical limit. There are 24 hours in your day. You have to sleep for some of them, and every hour can only be sold once. A proper rich person breaks that ceiling with leverage, things that keep working when they stop. People. A business with a trained team earns while the owner sits at his kid's football match. Not because he's lazy, because he built something that doesn't need his hands, only his decisions. Money. Capital that's invested is an employee that works around the clock, never calls in sick, never quits, and, this is the absurd part, pays its own salary and then hires more of itself. That's all compounding is, money employing money. Code and media. A piece of software, a course, a video, like this one, is built once and delivers 10,000 times at zero extra cost. A century ago, reaching 1 million people required a factory or a newspaper empire. Today, it requires a laptop and something worth saying. This is the newest form of leverage, and it's the only one that starts free. This is the real difference between a rich doctor and a rich founder. The doctor's income is high but linear. Every euro still requires his hands. The founder's income detached from his hours years ago. Neither is wrong, but only one of them can grow 100 times without working 100 times, because you can't work 100 times more. Nobody can. Watch for the tell in the wild. Proper rich people are obsessed with one filter. Does this scale? If a task fails the test, they automate it, delegate it, or delete it. Their calendar is a list of things only they can do. Everything else has been handed to a person, a system, or a machine. But here's the catch with building things bigger than yourself. You can't do it using information everyone already has. Which brings us to level 5, the level you can't buy in any store. Level 5. They build rooms, not followers. The flexor collects followers. The builder collects rooms, small circles where real information moves before it becomes public. Here's the uncomfortable mechanic behind it. By the time an opportunity reaches the news or your feed, the wealth inside it has already been distributed. The property gets bought before it's listed. The business gets acquired before it's for sale. The key hire happens before the job is posted. The best deals die in private conversations and never touch the open market, where the rest of us stand waiting with our savings. So proper rich people invest in access with the same seriousness others invest in stocks. They fly across the country for the dinner. They make the introduction expecting nothing back. This month, they answer the unknown founder's email, and they play a specific role on purpose, the connector. The person who links two people who needed each other is remembered and owed by both sides. That's a balance sheet no accountant ever sees, and it compounds like one. There's a research finding worth knowing here. Opportunities disproportionately arrive through weak ties, the acquaintance, the friend of a friend, not your inner circle. Because your inner circle already knows everything you know. Rooms are engineered weak tie machines. Every dinner adds edges to a network that keeps producing surprises. Followers give you attention, and attention must be constantly re-earned. The moment you stop posting, it evaporates. Rooms give you asymmetric information, knowing something valuable slightly before everyone else. That small gap in timing is where quiet fortunes are made, over and over, in every industry, in every generation. And it's precisely because these people understand what information is worth that they develop the strangest habit on this entire list. Level 6 looks completely backwards until you see the math. Level 6. They practice strategic invisibility. Here's a pattern that should genuinely bother you. The loudest millionaires online are usually selling the idea of being a millionaire. The actually wealthy are strangely, deliberately quiet. It's not modesty, it's arithmetic. Visibility has a price tag. The moment people know what you have, everything changes. Prices rise when you're the buyer. The contractor's quote, the seller's final number, everything gets a wealth surcharge. Lawsuits start finding you because lawyers sue deep pockets, not empty ones. Every relationship acquires a quiet question mark. Do they like me or the number? And in much of the world, visibility isn't just expensive, it's dangerous. Old money solved this generations ago. The richest families in Britain are names you've never heard. The German industrial billionaires, owners of the world's dominant machine parts and chemical companies, are practically anonymous by design. There's a term for the whole doctrine: stealth wealth. Sam Walton, founder of Walmart, at one point the richest man in America, drove a 1979 Ford pickup until the end. Asked why, he said his dogs had to ride somewhere. That answer is doing a lot of work. It's funny, it's disarming, and it ends the conversation about his money. That's not an accident. That's policy. The operating rule: reveal wealth only when the reveal earns more than it costs. The founder raising capital signals success loudly. That visibility pays. The same founder assembling land parcels shows up in a hoodie and lets the seller assume he's nobody. That invisibility pays more. Remember our man at the Mercedes dealership? The hoodie wasn't poverty, it was policy. Because here's the tell hiding inside every flex. Advertising exists to sell something. So when a person's entire lifestyle is an advertisement, ask yourself what they're selling. Usually, it's you, to their creditors or to their customers. Now, money working, time owned, debt tamed, leverage built, rooms entered, profile lowered. It looks complete. It isn't, because level 7 is the one that decides whether any of it survives. Level 7. They play defense as hard as offense. Ask any proper rich person their first rule of money, and you'll hear some version of Buffett's. Rule 1. Don't lose it. Rule 2. Don't forget Rule 1. Here's why that's not a cute quote, but hard math. Lose 50% and you don't need 50% to get back. You need 100% just to break even. Losses are not symmetrical with gains, which means one catastrophic hit can erase 20 years of brilliance. The graveyard of former fortunes isn't full of people who earned too little. It's full of people who bet everything on one thing. One company, one asset, one country, one uninsured event. So the properly rich build moats around what they've built. Structure. The business lives in a company, not in their personal name. The properties sit in separate entities. One lawsuit, one bankruptcy, one disaster burns one room, never the whole house. This is the real reason rich people have complicated finances. The complexity is the armor. Insurance and reserves. Boring, unphotographable, and the reason they sleep well. Cash reserves aren't lazy money. They're ammunition for the exact moment everyone else is forced to sell. Fortunes transfer during crises, and they always move in the same direction, from the leveraged and unprepared to the liquid and patient. Diversification with judgment. Concentration builds wealth. Diversification keeps it. The founder who never sells a single share is one industry shift away from zero. The proper move: get rich in one thing, stay rich in many. The flexor's finances are built for the best case. The builder's are built to survive the worst case, because the worst case eventually shows up for everyone. And surviving it is the strategy. Everyone who compounds for 40 years looks like a genius, but the only people who compound for 40 years are the ones who never blew up. Which raises the final question, the one that separates rich from properly rich. Everything so far protects wealth during a lifetime. Level 8 is what happens after it. Level 8. They build systems that outlive them. Here's the final exam, and almost everyone fails it. If they disappeared today, would the wealth keep growing? Level 8 people build machines, not piles. A pile, even a huge one, gets spent, divided, inflated, and fought over. Roughly 70% of wealthy families lose the fortune by the second generation, and 90% by the third. Nearly every culture has a proverb for it. In English, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. In Italian, from stables to stars to stables. The curse is universal because the mistake is universal. They passed down the money and forgot to pass down the machine. The families who escape build 3 things: a system, businesses, trusts, and portfolios with rules, professional managers, and governance, structures that don't depend on any one person waking up motivated. The founder becomes optional by design. And notice how opposite that is to how flexors think. The flexor needs to be the center of everything. The builder engineers himself out of the center. An operating manual. The next generation isn't handed money, they're handed training. They work real jobs first. They manage small amounts before large ones. They sit in the meetings for years before they vote in them. The values transfer before the assets do, because assets without values are just fuel for a fire. A purpose. A machine with no direction gets dismantled by the first bored air. Foundations, family missions, 100-year projects give the wealth a reason to hold together, something bigger than any individual's spending appetite. The Rockefeller fortune is now feeding its 7th generation. Not because the original pile was the biggest in history, it wasn't, but because the system around it was. Meanwhile, fortunes far larger have vanished without a trace because they were only ever piles. At level 8, wealth stops being a possession at all. It becomes infrastructure, something the family lives inside of, maintains, and hands forward, the way you'd hand forward a bridge. So run the 8-question test on anyone you think is rich, including the future version of yourself. Do they buy assets or applause? Do they own their time or rent it out? Does debt work for them or on them? Does their money earn while they sleep? Do they know things before the news does? Are they quiet about the right things? Would they survive their worst year? And would it all keep growing without them? That's the real scoreboard. And notice what never appeared on it: the car, the watch, the location tag. Everything the world uses to measure rich turned out to measure the opposite. Here's your one move for today, and it's level 1 because everyone starts at level 1. Before your next non-essential purchase, ask a single question. Does this pay me, or do I pay it? Ask it every time, without exception. That one habit is the entire difference between decorating a life and building one. Because the point was never to look rich. Anyone with a credit limit can manage that by Friday. The point is to build something that makes the looking irrelevant.